Ladies and gentlemen, I have done something that is very abnormal for me. I contributed to the campaign of a woman running for office outside of my district. Jess Phoenix is in the 25th district out in Canyon Country, and she is running against a gentleman by the name of Steve Knight. She's a Democrat, he's a Republican, and I contributed to her campaign. Now, I don't know if I've ever contributed to a campaign before in my life, but let's face it, for one thing, in the modern world, we vote with our wallet as much as we do at the polls. And when you look at Jess Phoenix, who I believe has never held office, you have to ask yourself, well, is she really the person you want representing California? And well, she's a volcanologist, so she has a lot of experience with big stinky holes that could wreck the lives of millions. And I would have to say, yes, that is perfect experience for working in government. Silliness aside, this is a person that goes, okay, let me look at what's happening, study it, and come up with a solution or an understanding. This is one of those things you have to admit about a woman of science. And that's the great thing about scientists versus politicians. Politicians want to enact laws that make them look good. Scientists want to enact laws that work. Now, another point to understand is she is running against the incumbent Steve Knight, who is a red candidate. As in, when I see this gentleman, I see red. He supports Donald Trump. And some people may even not understand why that's a bad thing. But here's the thing. He voted yes on the new tax bill. And the new tax bill cuts corporate cuts corporate tax, gives some money back to the middle class, and generally doesn't do that much for the poor. Now, if this man is a scientist, which he isn't, if he understands science, we can look back at history and say, what happened? What happened when bills like this have been passed in the past? Well, for one thing, I believe the Great Depression happened. The financial collapse in the early 80s, after Reagan did this. There was a major fall in the economy after Bush did this. I mean, really, these cuts for the wealthy always hurt the economy. And the reason is, you know, it's very simple. A rich man says, well, I could keep this, say, $100,000, or I could pay my workers $100,000. Why would I pay them more if I can keep it? Then we tax it. So it's like, well, you can keep 75,000 of that 100,000, or you can pay your workers with it. Now it's like, I still want to keep it. That's our current law. That's under the GOP tax bill. But you know, before Reagan, it used to be, oh, you're a rich person? Well, you've got this $100,000. You can keep 25,000 of it, or you can pay it to your workers. And when you pay it to your workers, you're ensuring a stronger economy and a better business. So, most people at that point would say, I don't want the headache. Let me pay that money, and that way I know I'm putting out a product that the customer is going to like. I'm keeping skilled laborers for longer, and they're happy with their job, so they're not going to screw me over. If the rich man goes, I can use this money to alleviate a problem, or I can keep it, the amount of it he keeps is a problem. So Steve Knight, not being a person who studied history, has signed into a bill that is very likely to do major damage to the economy. That is what history tells us. But that's not the reason I donated to the campaign of Jess Phoenix. I have to point this out that, look, I was on the internet one time and I was writing about the tax bill, and I talked about how somewhere in Los Angeles there is a child who is hungry. There's thousands of them, in fact. And somewhere in Los Angeles there's a man crying because he has to put his dog down because he can't afford for the medical coverage for that animal. And I mean, this is I've had to do this. It's not a fun thing to do. And a Republican answered me, and he said, "Why would you have a child you can't afford? Why would you own a dog you can't afford?" Well, buddy, I don't have any children, but I happen to be 38 years old. I've never purchased a dog in my life, but I've owned 2 of them. I rescued animals. And when I say I rescued animals, I mean a dog showed up, I couldn't find the owner, so I kept it. Another animal, somebody had purchased this animal and couldn't take care of him, and I got this dog because it was that or he'd be put down. So I never chose to have these animals. These animals kind of chose me. But I would have to make the argument that being poor shouldn't mean you're not allowed to own a pet. Being poor shouldn't mean that you're not allowed to have children. Especially given the fact that the general consensus among Republicans would mean that they would expect all poor people to be abstinent, and that's going to make a lot of really angry poor people. So what am I saying here? I'm saying to all of you that there are 12 senators from the state of California, 12 legislators, I don't know if they're all senators, I believe that they are, but 12 legislators from the state of California who voted for a tax bill that is likely to tank the economy, and it's likely to make people not have enough money to feed their children and have to put their dogs down. And these people know that, and they blame the people for having dogs and having children, rather than blaming the bad economy or the fact that our government is not properly monitoring and regulating business. Now, the Republicans come out and say, less government is good. I would argue that the right amount of government is what we need. And I believe a person like Jess Phoenix is going to understand when we need more or less. Because she is the kind of person that has to pack a bag in a life or death situation because she's going up to a volcano with lava and fire and dangerous gases. And she understands, hey, I can bring so much and I have to stay safe. Now, there are a lot of issues I still don't know about with Phoenix, but I'm sure she'll reveal them before the election. I happen to know, however, that she is a person that cares about the people of California. Steve Knight cares about the people that give him money. You choose, California. I've made my choice.